Hello and welcome to Nanapod, a podcast dedicated to the fantastic manga written by A. Yazawa. I'm Crystal, and I'm joined by my best girl Kirsten as we dissect this manga, discussing everything from the emotions, the cultural impact, as well as any headcanons that might be floating around in our brains. With this podcast, we hope to preserve a shoujo staple that sadly hasn't been talked about in a very long time. So come with us. We're waiting for you in apartment 707.
Hello everyone and welcome to Nanapod. We are on chapter 56 and we have a picture of a night skyline here, and then we're going to the dorms and it's Nobu. And he's saying, something smells good. And we can see all of these cosmetics laid out. And Yuri says, like what? And he says, Asami, sniff, sniff. And she's like, oh, it's some new body spray I got. Our PR person gave it to me. It's supposed to be for teenagers. Do you like it? It smells like real fruit. Which, you know, how interesting that she kind of brings this up in the year of the Epstein file reveal. You know, that was something that a lot of women in my age bracket were talking about. Because remember, this is happening in '01, and even though these are like, 21-year-olds, and they are adults, but if that body spray is meant for teenagers, a lot of ladies were talking about the fact that, you have these really creepy men that were designing and making lingerie and body spray that was meant to attract, older men. It's really, really it's gross. It's gross. But anyway, Nobu was like, yeah, heart. Smells like teen spirit. Oh no. And she says, then I'll keep it on heavy rotation, heart. I'll be a sweet young thang, heart. This is getting worse. And then Nobu's like, oh, and there's like all like these little candies around that O. And he's like, it smells like the hard candy I ate when I was little. And she turns around and is like, hard candy? Why can't you just call it candy? I don't like hard candy. And he's like, I always stole the ones they kept at the front desk of my parents' inn, and my mom would yell at me. But when someone tells you not to do something, you want to do it even more. Everything's like that. And he's like fully face plants into her cleavage. And then she stands up really abruptly and she's like, then don't eat it. And he's like, hey! And he's pulling on her little negligee and she turns around and she has this really wicked grin and she's like, hee. And then she puts her leg up on the stool and she's like, just lick it instead. And he's got dots and he's like, yes, ma'am. Okay, that part's cute. Anyway, we have a scene change. And it's Yasu and Miyu. And he's kissing her mouth. And then he kind of kisses the top of her nose. And then he pulls her in for a hug. And then he kind of stops. And because Miyu's kind of like gone still and she's blushing, and he looks over and he sees that his cigarette is still smoking, and so he puts it out real quick. And then she's still blushing, and then she's like, Yasu? And she's like, wait, I'm sorry, I can't do this right now. And he looks at her like, oh, okay. And she's like, I'm sorry, but I'm 27. But I can't just do it like that. And he looks over at her like, And then he says, you don't have to apologize. I know you have a problem with guys. I won't do anything you don't want to do. And she's like, but I really like you, Yasu. And he looks over and he's like, really? And then she's got blushes and dots and is like, yeah. Because I don't think she readily admits feelings like this because she's just a very serious individual. And then he's picking up his glasses and he's like, then let's just take things really slow. And she's like, yeah. And he smiles like, it's perfectly okay with me. And she looks over at him and she's like, you seem calmer and more mature, but you're younger than me. It's not fair. And he's like, that's not true. You kick my ass in Mahjong. I'm really scared inside. I don't look it, but I'm nervous. And she says, Mahjong has nothing to do with it. You just like it. And he says, but when I put out my cigarette, you knew what I was going to do next. And then she's got like this, tick. And then he says, you got skills. It's amazing, Miyu. Big eyes, like, a compliment? Never been complimented before from her. And he says, you're very insightful. It's good you can see into people. People always tell me they can't figure me out, what I'm thinking. So I need a girlfriend like that to make a relationship work. And then she closes her eyes and she's like, oh, now I get it. And he's like, what? And she says, why you like me? It was the one remaining mystery. And he's like, oh, well, it's not only that. We get along well. That's it? And she's like, you made a conscious decision to get a girlfriend, Yasu, to stop Nana from being dependent on you now that she's married. And he just sort of pauses, and then he's like, well, it's not just that. And she's like, Nobu told me once that you don't want a girlfriend. I thought it was because of Nana, and I envied that kind of relationship. And she has a memory of when Yasu was holding Nana when she was having like one of her big freakouts and was saying, I'm not going anywhere. And she says, but if you coddle her too much unconditionally, I'd worry that Nana would act spoiled, like a baby. And he doesn't say anything to that for a moment. And then he says, I've thought about it a lot, and I regret it. She used to be way more independent. And she says, so Yasu, you don't want to be with me 'cause you like me, but 'cause you need a girlfriend in order to distance yourself from Nana? And he looks over at her with a small sweat bead and he's like, no, but I really like you, Miyu. But I'm glad she's asking because, you wouldn't want to be used by somebody. That's just not cool. And then she repeats what he said earlier, and she's like, really? And he has all the dots, and is like, and she's like, don't get me wrong. I'm not accusing you of anything. If I get married, I want an arranged marriage. And he says, an arranged marriage? And she says, but I don't want to get married, so I don't want to meet someone that way. I don't trust love very much. It's a temporary impulse that makes you lose yourself and forget what's important to you. I'm not comfortable with that. And he says, yeah? That's what Yuri does, huh? Nobu too. She says she never learns. She's always like that, but she's resilient. In a way, I'm jealous of that. I need a solid base to stand on, or I get nervous. So the more dreamy I get, the worse I function. And he's picked his cigarette back up and he's just kind of like, I could see that. And then she's like, so when you make the decision to get a girlfriend and thought logically about who would be appropriate and choose me because you consider me the best candidate, I couldn't have been more psyched. I trust decisions like that way more. And he doesn't say anything, just pauses. she goes on to say, I told you before, I like you 'cause you're solid, Yasu. He's smiling like, oh, okay. And he's like, but I can get giddy and excited too. Like when you tell me things like that, I get all dreamy. Is that all right? And then she's just laughing, like, yeah, of course. Because Yasu, he's very good. And he doesn't get excited very often. It's nice when he does. And we have a scene change back to Nana, Ren, and Hachi. And she is, she's sat back down. And I think she's trying to play it really cool right now after the reveal that Hachi and Takumi got married. And she's like, so then, let's toast to Hachi becoming the wife of a Yakuza. And Ren's like, you're like a Yakuza wife yourself in every way. And she says, shut up. And he goes glug glug with a heart. And she's like, I mean, don't drink before the toast. And Hachi is giggling. And Nana's like, you really don't play well with others. And Shin goes, all right, guys, cheers, heart. And Hachi looks so happy. And then there's the think boxes. And they say Nana walked back into the room. A strong citrus scent followed her and took shape. I could feel the bond between Ren and Nana when they were together. And Nana says, well, I'm relieved, actually. I was wondering what to do if you really ran away from him. Hachiko, you're a lost cause. And Shin has dots and this look on his face like, I think you're exaggerating. And Hachi says, I'm sorry for always making you worry. But I made up with Takumi, and I'm really happy now, heart. And Nana says, yeah, I can see it in your face. And then Shin stands up, and he's like, well, I'm out of here. And Hachi says, what? And she's like, wait, Shin, I still need to talk to you. And he says, I'll listen to your love life tomorrow. She's like, it's not that, it's search. And he says, I'm off then, so call me anytime. And then there's a slam of the door. And Hachi's like, dots. And then Ren's like, Hachiko, will you grab me a beer? And she's like, sure. And Nana's like, me too. And she's like, yeah. And then in the background, Nana's saying, maybe I'll eat something like ochazuki, which is just tea over rice. I don't know how I feel about that. And then Ren's like, yeah, me too. And she says, don't copy me. And now there's the think boxes, and Hachi's like, well, whatever. As long as Shin's in the hotel, he'll be all right. I'll lecture him tomorrow and let him go tonight. He's smart and level-headed, so he can't be too much of a screw-up. And she's thinking, only Takumi noticed. Even Yasu doesn't know. But when I think about it, Takumi's pretty amazing for noticing it. I think he noticed it because it involves Rira. Like, that's really it, I think. And now we're in room 2606. And the think boxes are still saying, how did he pick up on it? And Shin is kissing Rira, and she looks very, like, kind of happy to be kissed, but also there's that hesitancy too, because she's been thinking a lot the past, like, day or so. And then he kind of starts to pull up her skirt, because mostly all they do is sleep together, and she stops him, and she's like, Shin, I need to talk to you about something. And then we're back in Nana's think boxes, or Hachiko's think boxes, and it says, is it because Takumi's always watching Rira? And then Nana says, can you call room service for us, Hachiko? And she's like, yeah, sure. And it's like, Nana, do it yourself. But anyway, Hachiko's thinking, but that's just because she's essential to him as their precious diva. It's all right. I know I'm loved. Like she's talking herself into it. Everything's fine. and we're back in the other room, and there's a flick of Shin's lighter, and they've, they're not really saying anything to each other. She's got tea, and she is not saying anything, and he's looking over at her, kind of worried. And then he's like, so, what do you want to talk about? And she says, when Ren and I went back to visit our hometown, Serge took photos of us together. And Shin looks over and he's like, what? And she says, I promise I didn't do anything with Ren. Please believe me. And he's like, no, I know. If you hooked up with him, you wouldn't have sent me an email like that, Rira. And she smiles like, oh, good. And then he's like, were you scared I'd be bummed when I saw those photos? It's all right. Was that all you wanted to tell me? And she's like, no. The agency stopped the story from going to print. And he gets big eyes, and he's like, really? Well, that's good then. And she's like, no, it's not good. And he just looks very startled, and she's like, there was a lot of fallout related to that. It caused problems for everyone around us. It stressed them out. Now I really understand the position I'm in. And he is just pausing and waiting, and she says, I cannot have another scandal happen now. And then he just kind of looks away from her, and she says, 'cause for me, singing is my whole life. I've sacrificed so much for this. If Trap Nest flops 'cause of me, I'll never forgive myself. And he closes his eyes. And she's like, and Shin, you have things to worry about too, now the blast's really taking off. But I've been so selfish and too dependent on you. It can't go on like this. I have to be strong and a more responsible person. And his eyes are still closed, and she's like, so I was thinking that maybe we should stop seeing each other for now. Which, she's come to this decision on her own, not influenced by Takumi at all, even though Takumi had said to Shin that, he needed to take it easy and he needed to back off from Rira for now. And it could be that Rin is, or Shin is thinking in this moment that Takumi is influencing her decision. Maybe just a little bit. And now we're back in the other room, and Nana says, what? Serge found out? And Hachi says, yeah. And Ren, he says, the story is going to be in this week's issue. It's going to say that Hachiko's your ex-roommate, so they'll probably come after us for some interviews too. And Nana's like, what? And Hachi's like, I'm sorry. And Ren says, you don't have to apologize, Hachiko. It's my fault. And Nana says, I can understand about you and Takumi, but when people find out we're friends, you'll have no privacy whatsoever. People will be all over you all the time. And Hachi's like, yeah, but I'll be careful about what I say, and I'll try not to let any of it get in your way. And Nana says, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Since you know about this in advance, can't you stop them from printing the article? And Hachi says, what? You can't do that. And Nana says, that's not true. I know there was some big celebrity gossip that didn't make it in last week's issue. And Ren just looks at her like, huh? And then she glugs her beer. And Hachi's like, really? How would you stop it from getting published? And she says, how would I know? Why don't you ask Ren? And Ren's like, what? And then Hachi turns over to him and is like, all right, Ren, how? And he's got all the sparkles, and he's like, well, probably. Search was paid off. And Nana goes, wow, you know everything, Heart. That's my Ren. Aww. And yep, that's sarcasm. Angry sarcasm. And Ren turns away with the lines and the stress lines and the dots. And then Hachi's like, money. It's probably cost so much they can't afford it. Cookie Music isn't such a big company. And then Nana's like, oh, I get it. They're out of money because of stupid idiots. She's being so mean. And then Hachi's like, what? What stupid idiots? Ren's got the dots like, she's talking about us. And then Nana crushing her beer can. She's like, this is really pissing me off. Well, why else wouldn't they be able to stop your expose from going to print? And Hachi's like, what? And then there's a ding dong, and Ren's like, oh, Okazuki. Their food's here. And Nana's like, it's no big deal. I'm just worried about you. And then Hachi is smiling, and she's like, thank you. But I'm alright. I have Takumi. And as, Ren's walking away, he looks really sad. And Nana's like, yeah, you're right. And then back in the other room, Shin and Rira have taken a pause, and he, quickly puts out his cigarette, and he stands up, and he's like, I get it. I'll stay away. And she's like, Shin. And she's like, wait, please try to understand. I still really like you, Shin. I'll call and email you too. We'll be able to see each other again at some point. And he says, if you can decide to not see me just like that, then forget about it. Shin. And she's got the big eyes. And he says, my role is to fulfill your loneliness, Rira. If we're not going out and you're even lonelier, then what's the point? And it's like, but she didn't say that though, dude. Are you putting words in her mouth? Because I don't, maybe she said it in, other chapters, but I don't think she ever said that. I think this is him just assuming what she's thinking. And she's like, it's not like that. You should find a girlfriend who's better for you. And he's like, let's just forget about what's gone on between us, Rira. It's better if we pretend nothing ever happened. And her eyes are real vacant, big and vacant, and there's a slam of the door. And then there's memories. And it says, you have to watch everything you say and do. And then, she's just replaying then let's forget about it. And then she's remembering back when he had brought a guitar to her and said, Shinichi Okazaki will serenade you. And now she's just breaking down and crying. It is very sad. For me, I think this is the first time that Shin is reacting impulsively. Let's assume that he thinks that Takumi is influencing this decision of hers, instead of actually her coming to the decision that they actually do need to cool it because bad things could happen, And also, Shin loves Rira. And when you're in love, you act impulsively sometimes. So a lot of what Mia was saying earlier about, love making you kind of unsettled and not acting rationally, and you stop thinking about, what you really care about, and you just get all crazy. That's kind of happening here. So the themes are theming in this particular chapter. And now we have a scene change. Miyu says, I don't like the smell of cigarettes. And Yasu turns around with huh? And she's like, oh, sorry, he's like, oh, sorry, people always tell me that. And she says, oh, that's not it. That one smells good, Heart. And he looks over at the dots. He's like, does it bother you or not? And she's like, I remember smells so vividly. The minute I smell something, I remember some faraway thing from the past I'd forgotten about. He's like, yeah, Miyu, that's how the scent works. And then he's like, oh, everyone's like that. That's how our brains work. Thank you, Yasu. And she's like, brain? Really? And he's like, the part that controls smell is directly connected to the part that controls memory and emotion. Vision goes through another part, so smell brings back memories most vividly. And she's like, really? That's interesting. Of course there's a logical reason like that. And he says, do you have some bad memory involving this kind of cigarette? Like an X? And she says, no, I think that smell just captured the moment perfectly. And he's got dots and blush lines, and he's like, sorry? And she's like, so from now on, whenever I smell it, I'll think of you, and when I'm around Shin too. And he's like, and you don't like that? She's like, I don't like having someone affect me that much so easily. I can't stand it. But after I flew to Fukuoka, I kept thinking about you, Yasu. And he's got the dots. And she's like, oh man, maybe I'm getting all giddy. I don't know what to do. And he's like, it's all right. Even when I get lightheaded, I don't lose my grip on reality. So you do whatever and don't worry about it. And she says, but there's just one thing I'm worried about. Can I ask you that? And he says, shoot. And she says, if Nana and Ren break up, what's going to happen to me? And then he has this look like, that's what she's worried about? And she's got this very sad look, and he smiles and he says nothing. And he says, I really just wish them the best and hope they stay together as long as necessary. And she's got big eyes like, oh. And also, I do like how direct Miyu is, but that's part of the good thing, you know, like she wants to know all of the things. She wants to know, like, are you just getting together with me because, you know, you want to make sure that Nana doesn't stay, you know, connected to you? Because I don't necessarily know if I feel good about that. And he's like, no, I mean, that it is helpful, but like that isn't the reason, because I actually like you. But she's also like, I don't like having people affect me this strongly, which because I think Miyu protects her heart a lot, and he's just kind of like, I totally understand that. And also, you know, if Ren and Nana break up, the implication, of course, of that question of what, you know, when they break up, what's going to happen to me, is, are you going to ditch me and fall back in love with her and go take care of her because she will need you? And he's like, no. So, it's good. And now we've seen change back to Hachi and Ren and Nana. And Hachi's saying, well, thanks, guys. I'll come visit you at your new place. Meguro's pretty close to me, Heart. And Nana says, yeah, come over anytime. And he says, good night. Heart, take care. And she says, good night. And then they shut the door with a click. And Nana is walking away. And this whole time, she has not taken her glasses off, by the way. And Ren looks over because, you know, they haven't talked. They haven't said anything to each other. And Nana is really upset. And Ren knows she's really upset. So he tries to get her attention. And he's like, Nana? He's like, hey, wait. How do you know about the search article? She doesn't say anything. And he's like, wait! And she slams the bathroom door. And he's like, Nana! And she clicks it shut. And then there's a crank as she's turning on the water. Because this is what Nana does, you know, when she's really stressed out and stuff, she takes a bath. Like, water is just kind of her thing. And she's thinking back to when Hachi said, I'm all right, I have Takumi. And then Yasu said, don't cry in front of me anymore. So, abandonment issues. And she is just starting to cry at last. And she's taking the glasses off. And she's put her head down onto the tub. And Ren is outside. And he has sat down on the other side of the door. And he's taking out a cigarette. And then downstairs, at the lobby reception 3, there's a ding, and Hachi has, she's on her phone and she's looking, and it looks like her old boyfriend Asano is passing her, and she looks up with like a huh? And then the think boxes are like, while waiting for the elevator back down, I passed someone I hadn't seen in a long time, but maybe it was just my imagination. She's like, why do I still think about Asano? June's gonna yell at me. She's like, and my heart skipped a beat. God, I'm hopeless. Vroom of the car, the taxi, she's driving away. At least she's, you know, more mature for realizing things that she's thinking about. She's thinking, I've fallen in love a lot and always ran away when I got hurt. But from now on, no matter what happens, I'll love Takumi and stick with him. This love will last forever, like Ren and Nana. Oh boy. And then, you know, Ren's been out here for a while because, my God, what has he gone through? Like, it looks like 7 cigarettes already. And then he's like, Nana. And he says, how long you going to stay in there? And he's trying to open the door with a jiggle. And he says, please open the door. And then he's banging on it. And he's like, Nana. And now she's got eyes like, just angry, just extremely angry. Like, no, I won't. Stubborn, you know, kind of childish. And he's like, say something. Hey, are you alive? And she says, why would I die? Why don't you die instead? That's mean, Nana. And then he just pauses and he's like, nothing happened with me and Rira. We just went home together on our day off. I wouldn't sleep with anyone besides you. I'm not lying. And then she says, kind of quietly, but you guys were holding each other. And he says, what? I can't hear you. And she says, you guys were in the snow hugging. And he gets, you know, startled eyes, and he's like, you saw the photos? Like, you know, realization. And she's crying, and he's like, how did you see them? And he's still trying to open the door. And he's like, hey, Nana, open the door. Listen to me. And he says, I only helped pull her up on the seawall. She was wearing heels. She looked like she was going to bite it in the snow, or bit it in the snow. And she's having all of these flashbacks. I'm going to Tokyo. I can't let our precious little diva get hurt. And she screams to him, I don't want you to write songs for anyone else but me. And there's a silent pause, and she gasps. And he's like, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm really sorry. Please open the door. And Nana is starting to have a panic attack. And he yells, Nana! And there's a click. And he opens the door, and she reaches out for him. And she is, you know, like, you know, like nut. She's not breathing. And he's like, hey, what's wrong? And she's like, Ren, help me. And Yasu's having a memory of Yasu when he's like, when Nana hyperventilates, give her carbon dioxide. And he's like, carbon dioxide? How do you do that? And he's like, it's easy, says Yasu. People breathe out carbon dioxide. And there's a pause, and he says, you're the only one who can save Nana from herself. Please get it together and be there for her. And now he's holding on to Nana, and he's like, Nana, I am so, so sorry. And she's like, I'm gonna die. And he says, you're not gonna die. And she says, help me. And he says, I won't let you die. And he puts her down on the bathroom floor, and he's starting to, like, breathe steadily into her mouth. And she holds him really close. And then we have the think boxes, and it says, hey Nana, even now, on every street corner, I think I see you in every face I pass. Nana, you must still be wearing that men's cologne now, just so you can sleep. even when you're alone. Which is very ominous foreshadowing. Oh, it's so sad, guys. You know, the codependency really is a problem. But I'm also glad that Nana finally told Ren how she was feeling, because it's important, I think, for him to know. And I know he feels guilty about it. And that's why I said so many episodes ago that when he decided to go to Tokyo and he didn't tell her, that was the beginning of the end. Of everything good in Nana's life. And abandonment issues are hard. Really, really hard. And at this moment she feels that everyone has left her. That Hachi's left her, that Yasu is leaving her, and, you know, that Ren betrayed her. So she's not in a good spot. It's too bad that she's not getting therapy. But there's no time. You know, not now that the band's on tour and all this kind of jazz. So it's rough. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me again. And I will see you all in the next one. Good night.